Well, hello there, beautiful soul, and welcome back to Chat and Channel Session. In today's session, we're going to be getting a little bit more personal than usual because we're going to be discussing spirituality and sacred sexuality and sexual identity and how those things can fit together as a spiritual person. But we're also going to be diving into pride, and I'm going to be letting you know about more of my experience as a queer spiritual person, reader, teacher, coach, and energy healer. It is my intention that whether you fall into the LGBTQ plus family of rainbow warriors or not, that today's session will help you understand more of those ways that sexuality and spirituality do not have to be such separate factors or so misunderstood in our lives or our spiritual journeys in bringing us closer to our own sacred selves, closer to each other, and closer to higher power. So if that interests you, welcome. I appreciate those of you who are returning here at Chat and Channel Session. And to those of you who are new, hello, my name is Danielle, #damsel at D's Enlightened Edits, your energy editor of damseldesigns.com. That is www.damcldesigns.com. I am a lifelong spiritual and psychic medium, quantum Sikhem and shamanic energy healer, as well as life and consciousness coach, energy artist, writer, metaphysical teacher, and so much more. And this is Chat and Channel Session, where my guides, and in some cases some of you, present me with a topic and we do a stream of consciousness channeling about it. If you would like to participate in the chat portion of Chat and Channel Session, feel free to do so by leaving a comment, question, or review, or my favorite way for you to participate, which is by getting out a journal or the notes app on your phone or favorite device and doing some stream of consciousness writing along with me as I channel. Those of you who do this often find that you get intuitive hits and insights of your own that are specific to the topic that we are channeling on today so that you can better incorporate and integrate the material. I am so happy that you've chosen to join me for today's session, and though it is relevant for the month I am recording and releasing it originally, which is Pride Month by me, I am sure that the timeless topic will help you absolutely any time of year that your spirit guides have deemed fit to call you here. For those of you who would like to explore further and work with me spiritually, you can visit my website, damseldesigns.com, anytime for spiritual reading sessions and application forms to work with me in a transformational quantum or shamanic energy healing and or life and consciousness coaching capacity. On my website, you will currently also find digital downloads, energy art, and enlightened merch items, including my Solidarity, Pride plus Equality collection, which currently also donates part of its proceeds to wonderful LGBTQ plus organizations. So I'd love for you to check that out. And remember, you can also follow me at D's Enlightened Edits on Instagram for spiritual inspirations on the daily. Now, with all that being said, let us jump back into today's topic at hand. I want to start off today's session telling you a little bit more about me. As I said, I am a queer creator and queer spiritualist, and that is something that, quite frankly, took me a while in my own personal life to come to terms with. And then even once I did, it took me even more time in my business and professional life to be out and proud, as they say, because I was helping so many people with spirituality, with connecting with loved ones in spirit and higher power and different aspects of loving relationships, including divine ones. And I was honestly worried how people would judge the work if they knew that I was queer, because spiritual work tends to go hand in hand upon the foundation of people's religious beliefs. Although I do believe that religion and spirituality are two different things, I believe religion is more dogmatic and, in my opinion and experience, more restrictive. Many people do start their spiritual journey with at least some aspect or belief system based in one or more religions. And many of the world's religions are still against or very limited in their view of LGBTQ plus relationships and ways of identifying and being. Now, in my opinion and experience, I would not be the person that I am and be as loved and gifted by God, Goddess, Source, if it was wrong to be queer. I believe both of those things were an agreed upon experience between me and my Creator, and that I am loved for all of it, not despite it. And that's an important distinction for me to make. So whether you are an LGBT person or whether you love an LGBT person, I hope that that speaks to you and helps you with any of your own internal levels of acceptance, whether it's for yourself or for those loved ones, because many people, whether they are on the queerness spectrum or not in this lifetime, will at least love or come to know and love those who are part of the Rainbow Warrior community. And it can, in some instances, too many in my opinion, interfere with someone not only judging the work or the talent or the gifts of someone, like I was afraid it would with my clients, but also with how much we love and trust our relationships with others in the rainbow community. If on some level we are still struggling with internalized homophobia or questions or fears about what God thinks about that. Now, in my opinion and experience, the Creator creates by means of love and for experience. I believe that we are all and each parts and facets of a one higher consciousness that chooses to create individualized points of that consciousness, being us, to go out and expand and grow and heal in love and to report back in experience that would not be possible if we were still at that very localized form of Source, God, Goddess, higher power, universe, whatever you like to say. And so, in my opinion, there is no experience that is inherently wrong in God's eyes. I believe God to be non-judgmental, and although some things may take us closer to or further away from God if they are done in hate, etc., and against one another, anything that is done in love or with positive intention or by means to grow, I believe brings us closer to God. So anyone who is learning that process of loving themselves and loving another with consent of that other person, of course, I believe is a positive experience that brings us closer to God, Goddess, Source, Creator. And I hope that more people will start to see that and be able to break out of the bounds and beliefs that religious dogma has taught us over the years. I believe some of the messages that have been in the holy books or sacred texts that people hold dear about homosexuality were messages that were put there for very specific times in which we maybe needed to procreate to have more experiences upon the earth, and in which it was seen that being homosexual would prevent aspects of procreation, and therefore people believed that it would be against God. I do not believe that those words and rulings came from God, or at least not the God that I believe in and experience. I also do believe that some of these things have been misinterpreted over the years based on the channel, because as someone who is a channel, I can tell you that different messages, or rather the same message, will come through in different ways based upon that particular person's experience and filter who is channeling. So this is why I've done so much work over my lifetime to add to my experience and my knowledge from many different points of view and many different modalities and religions and aspects of the world, so that I could have an expansive filter to understand these messages that I know and believe come from higher power. And if these channels who were channeling for the religious texts and books did not have the means to be expansive channels at that time, or to be able to see and know and understand more than their own experience. This is where I believe some of those messages got misconstrued and misinterpreted over the years. So that may speak to you, and I hope it doesn't offend you too much if you are very connected and attached to your religious texts. But that's the way that I've been shown it through the Akashic Record, in terms of why there may be some conflicting messages from higher power, especially from religious books and texts that we have from the past. But going back to my story, I really did, to be honest with you, fear that people would judge my spiritual gifts and talents and abilities and all the knowledge that I've worked for so long to cultivate and add to, based on knowing that I was queer. And so it took me a few years to come to terms with my sexuality on my own and in my personal life. And I did at first identify myself as bisexual, which felt like a safer way to identify and come out for me. Not that it is by any means safer in certain parts of the world, but it felt like more of a comfort zone move for me. Now, a little bit more about me is that I am someone who has known and identified with different aspects of my consciousness since I was a very little girl. I remembered past lives and was talking about them since around age 3, and music and film and so many things from the past I recognized and I remembered, and it spoke to me and reminded me of who I have been in lifetimes past. Now, you do not have to be a believer of past lives. I'm just telling you about my personal experience, which is something that I also have cultivated to be able to do for others. So if you are a believer and interested, you may also want to visit my website and explore past life and Akashic Records reading sessions. But anyway, I very much knew that I had had other lives. I have remembered past lovers and families of mine, and I remembered male and female spouses that I have had based on having other lives. And with this unique perspective, and also with speaking with spirit and connecting with spirit since I'm a very little girl, toddlerhood as well, and since teenage years, been connecting family and friends with loved ones, and then not long after coming into this professionally for clients, etc. And having this perspective that every lifetime is its own unique experience, that gender is not something that is permanent. This is the way I see gender fluidity, because I knew that I have been male and I have been female multiple times, and I had the perspective that I was male or female, and that I was ending up with the partners, whether they were opposite sex or same sex, in these various lifetimes, based on who the soul was and how we were meant to connect with and love and teach each other or heal each other or balance karma, etc. I know of several souls that I've had several lifetimes loving, and I knew as well in reconnecting with them spiritually or physically that we had both been either male or female in various lives. And so originally, when I was coming to terms with my sexuality and coming out, I identified as bisexual, and I was still in a little bit of trauma response and explaining to people that I was identifying this way because I was open to whatever soul that I was supposed to be with, and that I would have the most loving experiences with. And of course, I would be open to more than one, as people tend to have more than one love relationships in a lifetime. But I didn't want to restrict that to either a male or female role, because I knew that the souls that I have loved before, or the souls that I was meant to love, could really be expressing themselves in and learning from any gender or any type of body. And while I still believe that, I do know that I was explaining that point of view to try to justify my sexuality and link it to having people understand me more. And that is not something that I would, at this point in my journey, recommend doing, because I don't believe that we need a reason, and I don't believe that we need to give others a reason. Although I am explaining it now, I want people to be able to hear that and be able to hear my experience and story to better understand and accept their own, not to have to follow that same process. Unless they choose to, of course, because I truly believe that our sexuality and our sexual identity are all part of our evolution. But I also simultaneously, as a mindfulness person and a wellness person and a healer, believe that we don't have to over-explain ourselves. And I was really doing that. I was over-explaining and trying to justify my attractedness and my sexuality to try to get people to accept me. And one of my biggest things now as a spiritual reader and energy healer and consciousness coach is to help people remember how small validation really needs to be as a part of our journey, because validation from others will always be finite. But if and when we can cultivate validation within ourselves and connected with our higher power, who and however we believe that to be, that will be infinite. So we can and will be validated during every step along our journey with self-love and self-validation and love and validation from our experience of Creator as we continue to evolve in that identity or in that definition of our sexuality. Now, for me, like I said, identified as bisexual towards the beginning of my understanding and awareness of myself and in coming out. And I also want to say that I didn't really have a lot of coming out experience, because I started to notice after speaking to the primary people in my life that I believe having that conversation had relevance for me in, it wasn't as relevant as I was taught to believe coming out to everyone. In other words, I didn't have the conversation with everyone in my family if they were not people that I believed would be receptive or caring about that, because we didn't really have close conversations about personal things or relationships. So I want people to understand that about pride and coming out, that while people put this pressure on coming out and being authentic and telling everyone who you are, and while it's something that I no longer hide about myself, it is not a conversation that I had with everyone in my life, because after having the conversation with several important people, I realized that unless the other people that I was planning to tell were people that I would talk about relationships with anyway, it was kind of a waste for me to have that conversation. And even beyond that, even the people that I would have the relationships conversations with in my life, I started to feel like, you know what? I know they love me. I don't have to have a big individualized coming out saying this is who I am, because they know who I am. And when I'm going to talk to them about a relationship, I know that they will accept that without me having to prerequisite explain the relationship first by explaining my sexuality and my sexual identity. And I realize that I'm very privileged to have some of those types of relationships where it doesn't have to be a prerequisite conversation, but I wanted to discuss that because I don't think it's spoken about enough, especially with people who are planning on coming out. I think that we feel that we have to come out at a certain point to everyone in order to be who we really are. And for me, I discovered that it just got to be a part of who I am, and I didn't have to have the big "this is who I am" conversation. I could have that with a few people who I needed to, and then the rest I could just be open, and it wasn't a big deal if and when I spoke about a relationship that I had with a same-sex partner. That doesn't mean that coming out was easy for me. It got to be easier, and it got to be easy with those select relationships that I had trustworthy and loving and unconditionally loving connections with. But for some of the people that were close to me that I had to have the conversation with, it was quite a lot for them to accept. And especially because my identity shifted and evolved over time, it was even harder, I found, for one or two of them to accept, because they got themselves attached to the original way that I identified or came out as, and then had trouble adjusting further. Honestly, as a spiritual person and as a spiritual medium and as someone who's always been in connection with spirit and loved ones on the other side, it was also a harder experience for me to come out to my loved ones in spirit, because I had a lot of inner homophobia and fear there, and I was afraid that they already knew and saw that about me before I came out to them, because I didn't get a chance to come out to all of them while they were physically alive, and they were people that I loved very much, and I was concerned how they would view me and my life and how I was going to carry forward the family name, etc., and all of these things that we can fear, right? So that's something that's a very real perception and fear for individuals, especially if their loved ones are passed away. And as a medium and as someone who has been through this myself, I can also say that for the most part, our loved ones do know before we share it with them. Sometimes there are boundaries there, and if you really need the boundaries, they, in most cases, will not know before you choose to share that with them, if they are people that it's not safe for them to know, or if they were people that it wouldn't be safe for them to know. So you can still have the coming out conversation through prayer and through the heart to your loved ones in spirit. And I have been privileged as a medium to be part of those conversations for others and to be a translator of those conversations for others from their loved ones on the other side when they ask that question. Does my loved one know? Do they accept me now that I have accepted myself? And for the most part, the loved ones do accept us on the other side. They have access to source, they have access to higher power and greater understanding and perspective, and many of them do use that to understand and appreciate and accept us for who we have incarnated as in this lifetime, because in my opinion and experience, sexual identity is unique to the lifetime that we're in. Now, sometimes that can carry over into various lifetimes, and we can choose that experience more than once to live and to learn our lessons, and it is a choice, in my opinion, at a soul level. It is not a choice that we make once we are physically here already. In other words, someone who already has that desire within them and that attractiveness, I don't believe can choose something else, because it is a choice that we have already made with our higher power before we have been born, so that we can learn the lessons that we are meant to and want to in that lifetime, and so that we could find and live with and love the people and the souls that will be most beneficial to us in that lifetime's journey. Now, like I said, sometimes sexualities can repeat in various lifetimes, as can romantic lovers and partners, but very often we swap those roles, we swap genders, we swap sexual identities, even if we are experiencing them with the same souls, in order to learn and heal and grow and evolve our soul. And so our loved ones in spirit get access to that type of information in understanding of themselves once they transition to the other side. And so for the most part, they are able to see us as having a human experience and learning through love in this way. And many of them do express acceptance or forgiveness or apologize to their loved ones that are still here on this side of life for not accepting them when they were alive. In very rare circumstances, not to scare anyone, but just to give you the truth of the situation, sometimes spirit admits to me and asks me to admit to the client that they are not as accepting yet, that they haven't come to that place in their soul of understanding or acceptance or forgiveness or apology yet. Now, this, in my experience, is because when we transition to the other side, we don't automatically become these angels with God and everything is hunky-dory and fine again. We still are evolving and growing and learning. And many spirits do express to me that they go through a kind of school in terms of their life review or in terms of balancing karma or slating themselves to learn and do better in the next lifetime. And they do still have experiences and experience different dimensions and levels of experience on the other side. Some of them transition to the higher levels right away based on the life they lived, and some of them do quite a bit of learning when they are on the other side. So that is something that I wanted to share because it was something that was a part of my coming out experience, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world. I had loved ones on the other side that accepted it and were, of course, loving me unconditionally, but I also had ancestors who were not so accepting and were a little hostile, frankly, to the idea. But those ancestors, for the most part, were also hostile to me having spiritual gifts and be able to access them and know things about them. So it tells you a little bit about who they were. And I hope that that speaks to you in terms of your accepting of yourself and your relationships with your loved ones on this side and the other side of coming out. Now, for me, the client situation in coming out to clients, that was quite a bit more extensive for me, to be honest, because as I said in the beginning of session, I worried how clients who I was helping spiritually and with loved ones in spirit and with their own healing and acceptance would accept me for my queerness. Now, if you notice, I'm using the word queer now more than bisexual because as a part of my evolution, I learned that I identified more with the term queer than bisexual because in this life so far, I really have not had attractiveness to male partners. While I remember from my other lives male partners that I have had, most of my attractiveness in this lifetime has been to same-sex or female partners. And I truly believe that our attractedness is leading us down the road or leading us down the path to who we are supposed to be with. Now, of course, I'm speaking in pretty binary terms. I realize that things have evolved to be more non-binary in terms of how people identify, and of course, gender is fluid, etc. But in terms of my particular attractedness, it has been to more feminine energy-oriented people, and I believe that that has been leading me towards the path of the people that I have been supposed to be with in this lifetime. And so far, it's worked out pretty well that I've had some divine love-based relationships that I know were slated for me and planned long ahead of this lifetime. I know that they were souls that I have known before, and while that is not important to everyone in terms of what they are looking for in love, as someone who identified as a twin flame for a large part of my life and came to an understanding where I was helping many clients with that as well, it was important to me. Now, twin flame love and divine love and destined love is romantic and romanticized, but it is also something that I would advise can be a limiting experience. So it is something that I coach and heal people in quite a different way now at this point in my journey. But I identify, as I was saying, as queer now because of that attractiveness leading me to more feminine energy partners, and that being my primary attractant for so far this entire portion of my life. And that took me, as I said, quite a while to accept, especially as someone who had other memories and someone who, quite frankly, liked a little bit of the comfort of saying bisexual and leaving the door open for other people's perception of possibly having a male partner. I do believe that the souls that we are meant to or choose to love can come in the form of any gender or any body. That soul is far beyond that. But I know that my attractiveness is female, and I accept that about myself. And I like to use the word queer because, first of all, queer means strange and weird in many facets of the definition as well. And I really love to embrace my weirdness, and it's something that had a negative connotation previously, but I believe that I can take the positive connotation of queer back. So it is the word that I most strongly identify with at this time, and I encourage you to find pride in however you identify, and also pride in your evolution. If you identified as one thing earlier in your journey, but then have come to find that something else better suits you in terms of a label, I find that perfectly fine. I also find that we get too caught up on labels in our life and in our current culture. I personally tie it to the fact that we're all part of this internet culture now as well. And what is internet like? It likes an algorithm, right? It likes to be able to classify things in order to find it quickly and understand. And while labels do help us identify and classify and understand one another, I think that having so many labels at this point can be a restriction in itself. Labels can be restrictive, and I really am for the belief that love is love. And also, as someone who's coached or healed or read for many different types of people throughout the world, not everyone needs a label, and not everyone sticks to a label within their lifetime because their heart and their soul is leading them to different souls that may be in different or same-sex or non-binary bodies, and it really, in my opinion, should not matter anymore if we've identified as one thing but then find love within the classification field of another. In my opinion, as long as the other soul is consenting to that experience, or the other souls for people who are polyamorous, that's really all that matters, as I've seen it, to God, Goddess, higher power. As long as we are respecting one another's consent and loving and learning to love better and ideally unconditionally, that's the important thing. So I want to encourage people that while, yes, labels can help us and they can help us to feel less marginalized or to help us fight for our rights, etc., it's not, in my opinion, the most important thing, unless you need it to be that for your journey and your experience. I would never want to take a label away from someone, and I'm so proud that everyone in society, in most parts of the world now, are willing to and have more resources to explore and define themselves. But I also want to be careful about that definition, because definition, I believe, should never be something that is permanent. I believe we are ever evolving, and so our definitions could and should evolve as well. And I believe that we will get to a point where we won't need as much of the label or classification. And it's actually why I love the rainbow symbolism so much for our LGBTQ plus IA community, because the rainbow is all encompassing, right? It is every color. It is a spectrum. And that's my favorite thing about it, because also as an energy healer and a quantum healer and someone who works with the chakra system, I believe everyone is connected to the rainbow regardless of sexuality. I love that we as an LGBT community have taken on this identifier of the rainbow as representing all things and all possibilities of divine love. And I believe love is divine in any form, as long as, I said, as it's with consent. And so personally, that's my belief and why I felt comfortable with the evolution of my sexual identity and preference labels shifting and evolving over time from bisexual to queer. Sometimes I'll use the word lesbian as well, since my primary partners have all been female, and that's what I am most looking for and attracted to in life. But I hope it also helps those of you who may have a shifting perspective in terms of your sexual identity or sexual preference and the way that you choose to come out or represent yourself. And the way that I've represented myself past the point of having those conversations with loved ones is then eventually coming to that place where I saw that in order to be the most helpful to others in terms of my clientele and my business and my gifts and my healing abilities, I really needed to work through and drop that inner homophobia and that fear of not being accepted or understood. And I needed to come to terms within myself with the fact that in order to help people the most, and in order to help them love and see themselves divinely like I wanted and intended, I needed to be able to do that for myself and understand that yes, while my sexuality may exclude some people from wanting to or choosing to work with me and my gifts, the ones that would not care or the ones that would be excited about me sharing who I was were the ones that wanted and were ready for and able to accept the divine level of energy that only I could bring them, and that God, Goddess, Creator, Universe had blessed me to be able to bring them in such a unique and accepting and expansive way. And so eventually I did come out in my business and to clients. I did that individually with certain clients first, and not again as a big coming out, just when it was relevant in terms of if I was helping them with a relationship or something and I was giving a personalized example, I was no longer afraid to share that my personalized examples for this lifetime were with female partners. Now, of course, because I am who I am and I have the past life memories that I have, I could relate to them on other and heteronormative levels as well. But that is why I believe I remember past lives for not only sexuality, but for so many other types of experiences, so that I can help people from a point of reference well beyond that of this lifetime. So that was really helpful for me to accept all of my queerness and all of my weirdness as someone who had such expansive experiences in terms of memories and past lives and knowledge, because it is ultimately about self-acceptance. And in doing my healing work and working on that, I was able to have that conversation more easily each time with clients, and then eventually just be out and proud on my business pages, knowing that it was not going to be a deterrent to the right type of people that were ready to really receive divine healing and divine guidance at this or any time in their lives. And so if you are a spiritual person who is LGBT and you're not entirely sure if it's the right thing for you to come out in your business, I would say remember that you never have to. It's really no one's business but your own. And please, no matter if it's for business or personal, please do not feel obligated to come out unless it is safe for you to do so, unless it will be safe for your environment and the safety of your person. But if it is safe for you to do so, and that's something that you choose to do, I hope my story encourages you to know that both personally and professionally, the right people will accept you. And yes, you may lose people along the way, but you will be elevated to a new class of people in terms of their awareness, their acceptance, their understanding, or their willingness to understand and grow and evolve with you or thanks to you and your inspiration inspiration. So thank you to everyone within the LGBT community who is doing that and is brave enough to do that and step to the forefront and be more authentic and inspire others. And thank you to all the allies and to my clients as well who have accepted me, and to my loved ones, of course, who have accepted me and done the work or are doing the work to understand and be more accepting, because it is a process for everyone, regardless of if we are the LGBT person or if we are the other person outside of that spectrum who is working to understand sexuality in terms of spirituality. And you know what? Those things are not supposed to be separate, in my opinion. There is such a thing as sacred sexuality that applies to everyone, regardless of their sexual attractiveness or sexual preference. Sacred sexuality is something that, in my experience, is and was always meant to be innate to who we are, both spiritually and physically and biologically, right? Our bodies operate the best when we are not depriving them of that complete and total sexual experience for the most part and in most circumstances. And sex is vastly misunderstood in the spiritual, mostly religious communities ever since the Abrahamic religions came along and started to kind of persuade us against sex or teach us that it was wrong in some form. Now, in my opinion and experience, as long as both parties are consenting, as we've talked about, consent, as you can see, is very important to me, physically and energetically. As long as we are doing so and operating on a sexual basis with respect to our soul sovereignty and the soul sovereignty and consent of another or others that we choose, then I believe it's something that can actually get us closer to God, when in the religious realities, we have been taught that sex can push us farther away from God. And that, in my opinion, is based on these misconceptions about sin and the fact that pride and lust and desire have been deemed sins by some of these religious practices and traditions, primarily, as I said, the Abrahamic ones, because in various religious traditions throughout the world, including Hinduism and Buddhism and different aspects that also honored the divine feminine, we have a lot of scenarios of tantric practice, which tantric practice is an honoring of the Shakti, or the divine feminine, and the divine masculine coming together in an elevated or kundalini type way that doesn't only have to involve sexual intercourse or sexual practice. It can also involve honoring the Shakti in various types of forms, such as dance, such as movement, such as other types of kundalini meditation, either solo or with a partner. And it even has, in years and centuries past, included the person simply reading and actively participating in tantric chants or tantric sutra or ancient text reading. So tantra itself and sacred sexuality has been very misinterpreted and misconstrued and demonized throughout the centuries, ever since certain religious dogmas started to try to take over and deem almost everything as demonic or as sin. And in many of the older and ancient religions, even the word demon or demonizing was not meant to represent this dark and scary creature. It was actually meant to identify someone or something that didn't follow the norm, didn't follow the rules. Now, that being said, I do not advise anyone to play with or interact with demons, although that, of course, is your soul sovereign choice. But I wanted to mention that because we so often demonize what is perceived as sin, and we misunderstand that in reality, most of what has been perceived as or written about or spoken about as sin is really just the overdoing of any certain behavior or any certain act, in my opinion, or an addictive aspect or egoist quality in regards to that. So that to me would mean pride, right? Obviously, we've been talking about pride in regards to sexuality and LGBT, but pride is known as a sin. Why is that? Well, if someone is too prideful, sometimes they block out their relationship with others or higher power, and so obviously that could be construed as a sin. But if we do not have any pride within ourselves or enough for self-love, then are we not also disrespecting our higher power and our creator that we are saying that we want to love and to acknowledge and follow? Because if we cannot find self-love and pride within who we are and who we and God have made ourselves to be, who our creator consented to us being and having the experience that we are having, then are we not disrespecting God? So this is where I believe the line is between where pride has been deemed a sin and where it's actually a necessity to survive and thrive and have a total earth-like and human-like experience. In terms of desire, that's been deemed as a sin because some people go into addictive qualities with desire or lust and can't really control themselves, right? And any sort of addiction can take us further away from the self and further away from God. So I believe sin is not something that is judged by God particularly. It's just something that has been put in place to try to help us understand what can get us closer to higher power and our true selves or farther away from that. And actually, this may piss some people off, but I have to say it anyway, so bear with me. I believe that the religious and dogmatic people and societies who are pushing this idea of the condemnation of people who are entering into loving lives with consent with one another, whether that be same-sex or non-gendered, etc., the people that are condemning this or trying to control this are actually pushing themselves further away from God or from higher power. Because number one, they're saying that they don't trust, on an unconscious level, of course, they're saying that they don't trust their higher power to love and appreciate everyone and all of that higher power's creation. They don't trust why God would create that, and they want to stand in between that creation and those people and higher power and try to pretend that they are more than by so-called following God's law, while at the same time giving kind of a backhanded slap to God and saying, I don't trust you to love these people. I don't trust you to accept these people. I don't trust you to allow the use of free will that you gifted to all of us by these people having their own free choice experience to love whoever they want to love and whoever wants to love them. And so I truly believe that those who condemn homosexuality and who condemn same-sex relationships or differently gendered type of relationships that are done with true love and consent, people like this, I have found, even in spirit, they are further away from God. They have more to learn. They bear themselves more karma, and they are quite upset when they reach the other side and realize that they let themselves and other forms of humanity and higher power down by not being able to respect everyone's soul and respect everyone's love and respect everyone's choices. And I would love to see less of that happen, especially as someone whose spirit, constantly comes to me, and I help those on this and on other sides of life. I believe that we're coming to a point where it's this sort of battle between who wants to attach to the old misconceptions and old ways and who is willing to grow and evolve and change and see God as love and creation. And that is what sex is, actually, right? Sex is about love and pleasure and creation. And pleasure has been deemed a sin as well, because if someone was pleased, they were not as akin to be controlled. hold, but pleasure is a necessity to our bodies. And sex can be, and in ideal circumstances, an act of love, pleasure, creation, and the understanding of give and receive, and the ultimate acts of love and respect. And in that way, when we are in ecstasy, when we are in pleasure, when we are in moments of being so seen and held and loved and respected by another, we are able to raise our own energy as well. And in a lot of circumstances, people feel closer to God. They feel more loved by God by being able to be loved by another in such a wonderful way in pleasurous capacity. Now, of course, there are other forms of sex as well that are just about pleasure, and that's not to say that that's wrong either. But these aspects where sexuality is sacred, where sexuality is respected, have been demonized by church-going individuals in Abrahamic religions, and some of them thankfully are starting to come more around in seeing that it is not something to be shameful about, because shame, in my opinion and experience, also takes us further away from God rather than bringing us closer to our true selves and our higher power. And I would love for people to start to accept this more. And I hope that you find more people in your life and in your collective experience that are willing to release the bonds to that negative form of attachment of dogma, and at least admit that some of these ancient texts may have been misinterpreted by the channels like we were speaking about earlier in session, or they may have been only relevant for the time. Something that has always baffled me is why people do not believe that God's word was always meant to continue and evolve over time, and feel such a necessity to attach only to the words that were shared in thousands of years past. Now, while I study all of those ancient books and all of those ancient texts and do find them valuable, I also believe that parts of them were very relevant for the time only, and for the lessons that people and humanity needed for that time only. I don't believe God ever stops speaking. I believe God, Goddess, Source, Universe is always speaking to us through our hearts, through nature, and through many other forms and means that I work with my clients on. And I do hope that more people start to listen to that internal voice and that internal connection with God, Goddess, Source, whatever you like to say, higher power, and start to feel moved to, if not love, at least respect one another for the loves that we are lucky enough to have and cultivate and bravely endeavor in our lives. So that is what I wanted to say and share for today's session, beautiful soul. I truly hope that this has helped you or loved ones in your life, and if you feel comfortable sharing it, I would love for you to share this as well. Remember to like it if you've liked it and found resonance or helpful information here, and if you feel comfortable sharing on your pages or having a discussion, I would absolutely love for this to be a spark for a discussion for you with some loved ones in your life. Maybe you want to bookmark this and come back and listen when you are coming out to people, or when you are wanting to discuss different aspects of sexuality and spirituality, and the ways that we can struggle in how those things interact and intersect. And you do not have to believe in and agree with everything that I have shared here today, but I do hope and trust and know that it will help spark something for you, and hopefully that is a level of love and self-love and acceptance that you didn't have, or perspective that you didn't have before. So thank you so much for allowing me and my guides and my forms of higher power to do that with and for you here today at Chat and Channel Session. Please remember to be a subscriber if you are not already. You can subscribe on my YouTube channel channel at These Enlightened Edits, where there is the biggest backlog of previous chat and channel sessions as well through a playlist with many other forms of timeless and spiritual topics that I'm sure will help you. And we are now also available on multiple streaming platforms, including Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Google, and Spotify, where you will find an additional feature to become a low-cost paid monthly subscriber if you would like to support the channels and gain access to additional content. You can also support my work here at Chat and Channel Session if you feel so called and drawn and able by leaving all amounts appreciated energy exchange and donations through www.paypal.me/DSEnlightened edits. And if you feel called and would like to work with me spiritually, you can visit my website anytime at www.damseldesigns.com. That's DAMCL designs.com, where you will find things like quantum reading sessions where we connect you with your higher self, your spirit guides, and loved ones in spirit. You can also, as we discussed, book Akashic records and past life readings, as well as spirit animal medicine, shamanic journey work, and many other types of spiritual sessions that I offer. There, as I said, you will also find energy art and enlightened merch, including my Pride collection, and an application form if you would like to dive deeper than session work and into a quantum Sikhem or shamanic energy healing transformational container with me, where we can also do life and consciousness coaching and dive to the deepest roots of any issues that may be plaguing you from this and or other lives, and help you see them in a new way to reset your energy and rise with your goals and gifts in mind. I would love to work with more of you in that capacity, but use that application form first so that I can reach out to you and we can set up a time to talk about building you a customized container for your soul. With that, I am going to close our session for today. Happy, healthy, safe, and blessed Pride if you are listening to this in a Pride month, or happy Pride no matter what time of year you are listening to this. I really love and appreciate you no matter how you identify, and I am so glad and grateful that you are here. Be blessed with love, light, and light codes. Love, Danielle. #damsel at These Enlightened Edits of damseldesigns.com.